So we are here in Old Portsmouth. You can see all the fishing boats in the background. We are at chapter 14, and to read chapter 14 you have Mr. Smith, head of PE. Enjoy.
Chapter 14, A Fisherman's Tale. It was early dawn, and the resistance crew lay asleep together on Wiley's old sofa in the tower house of Old Portsmouth. Floppy was up early, however, and was busy talking to Wiley whilst learning to paint. Sister Nana at the orphanage always said the fishes don't want to be caught, said Floppy, dipping his paintbrush into the jar of water. The old man ignored the comment and said, "Caught me a fish as big as a carrot once." "A carrot? I like carrots, I do." "Aye, little sailor, as big as 10 carrots it was. That's a lot of carrots." "It is when your boat is only the size of 3. Caught it in a storm and made a rug from its skin and an easel from its bones." "Wow." "Aye, little sailor, a fisherman makes his own rod to catch his own fish," he said, nodding over to the fishing rod proudly hung on the wall. Floppy stood up and walked over to the rod. He saw a perpetual brass calendar dial on the mantelpiece, which he couldn't help but pick up. "What's this, Mr. Wiley?" he said, weighing it in his paw. "That, my sailor friend, will tell you all the days of your life." "And this?" he asked, picking up another trinket box on the shelf. "Well, that contains the ramblings of another adventure," he explained. "You see, we sailors aren't born to one port, little kit. No, we sailors sail all the ports in all the lands, and in there are the stories of a few. To map the world is an adventure, Master Floppy." "I like adventures, Mr. Wiley." "So do I, little Sailor Kit," he replied, as the cuckoo clock sounded on the other side of the room. "Right, I'd best be gathering my things." The striking of the clock had stirred the others from their slumber. "Not yet. I'm nice and comfy," murmured Berry, rolling over onto his side. He opened his eyes and came face to face with Beaky, who was unintentionally hugging him. Berry jumped to his feet, coughing and puffing his chest out, quite embarrassed. "Things to do. You best be on your way now, me hearty," said Wiley, collecting his fishing rod, tackle and bag. "The wind is a steady north today," he added, grabbing his sailor's cap, which was hung on a hook in the hallway. Hertha jumped up and rubbed her eyes. "Guess what, Hertha? Guess what?" said Floppy, hopping up and down. "He once caught a fish as big as 10 carrots, he did." "You best be leaving out the back, my captain," said Wiley, as he walked through the hallway to his backyard. The group followed. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Wiley, sir," said Beaky, as they all spilled out into the closed yard, which was full to the brim with fishing nets and equipment. They watched as Wiley dragged his rowing boat into the fresh harbour water. Without saying a word, he tipped his cap to the group and rowed away into the misty morning sea, whistling to himself a sailor's sea shanty. Hertha began reviewing the map she had taken from the old boy. "The cathedral is northeast, that way," she said, pointing. "And how do you propose we get there, then, Hertha?" said Berry, peering over the rickety fence into the opposite alleyway. The morning markets were opening, and Portsmouth Point was once again starting to bustle with trade, oblivious to the war. It seemed in a world of its own. "Can we go back to the tavern, Hertha?" asked Floppy, beginning to sing again. "No, we have work to do, remember," said Hertha, as she looked around the yard for supplies. "Look at this." She grabbed what appeared to be a tarpaulin, but was in fact the cloth of an old sail used long ago on some epic seafaring adventure, no doubt. "Beaky, your knife," she said, as she stretched out her paw. "Floppy, hand me some of that rope over there." Agatha was left holding the map and studying it carefully. Beaky, on the other hand, was at the water's edge, dipping his webbed feet in ever so carefully and peering into the water to see what he could catch for breakfast. Berry was standing behind him to see if he fancied the fresh catch. "Okay," said Hertha. "Remember the plan, everyone. We head for the cathedral, and to get there, we use the cover of disguise. She handed out her makeshift monk's habits made from leftover Hessian sail. They each took their costumes and began putting them over their heads and tying them at the waist. Floppy needed help with his, which was slightly oversized, but which hid his tail effectively. "You look great, Floppy," said Agatha. "Yeah, almost holy," mocked Berry, pointing out the holes in his costume. Beaky, being a geyser officer, was relieved that he didn't need a silly costume and continued searching the shores for some breakfast for them all. He was quite successful and dug out some worms for Berry, some cockles for the rest of them, and fish for himself. They stood in line at the rear gate of the yard. The round tower loomed over them. "Remember to look the part," said Hertha to her rabble of kin. "Look holy, Floppy." "Like Brother Nicholas," said Floppy, waving his arms about, trying to find his paws in the long sleeves. "On my mark, we will walk serenely out in line," said Hertha. "Remember, follow me. Look down to the ground and don't say a word. We are holy members of the cloth." "I like this game already," replied Floppy. "Agatha, you head up the rear behind Floppy. Beaky, you're going to walk beside us." "Right you are," he said, saluting his captain and picking at a half-eaten fish. Hertha opened the side gate and led the group down towards Broad Street, past the round tower where Floppy, Agatha and Beaky had landed via zip wire the day before, and Hertha opened the side gate and led the group down towards Broad Street, past the round tower where Floppy, Agatha and Beaky had landed zip wire the day before, and headed towards the square tower. Their pace was slow as they passed traders and beggars, soldiers and sailmakers. The misty sea air and the foreboding of war would not see Portsmouth Point differ in its enduring endeavours. War didn't matter to these desperate livelihood seekers. They had to live somewhere. The group followed the road towards the square tower, a place not immediately familiar to Hertha and Berry, especially as they were attempting to look holy by looking at the ground in solemn prayer. Hertha, who was leading the line, suddenly stopped in her tracks as she saw the shadow of the tall stone wall hitting the roadside.